Okay, so we are just down from the restaurant, which is up there. Now the sun is out. Actually, I have this on because it's kind of cold. And beautiful tea plantation here in the back. So let's continue with John chapter 4, verse 19. So in the previous part, we've seen how Jesus asked her to bring your husband. She's like, no, I don't have. Jesus says, yes, what you said is actually true. 5, you had 5. The one you have is not your husband, kind of idea. So, and then this leads now to verse 19. The woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Right, in the Gospel of John, we see this often, like with the blind man. Later on, we're going to see as well how this man, prophet to like you are the Christ growth. In this case as well, just coming here, there's just this guy sitting there telling her he will give her water. And are you greater than Jacob? She didn't think he's greater than Jacob. And now, oh wow, okay. After Jesus said, but yes, your husband, yes, you had 5. The one you have now is not yours. It's like, oh, okay. She clearly then understood that this is not just an ordinary guy. So it's like, are you a prophet? This is what you are. So I perceive, not just actually a question of, are you a prophet? She said, I perceive you are a prophet. Right? So in other words, yes, you are maybe even in a higher level than Jacob. Right? So she calls the prophet, the Holy Spirit prepared her heart, and Jesus is sowing in the right way, leading her on to see the truth. This is now what she is getting at this. It's growing in her. Verse 20. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is a place where people ought to worship. Okay, so she's like, I know there is where the Jews had to. Okay, it's not that they couldn't worship in other places, right? But the whole point was that if they had to bring the offerings and all of that for Easter and all, they had to go to the temple in Jerusalem. So that was the place, the one place ordained by God, where they had to do all of that kind of worship. And so see, but our fathers, here mountains around us. They worshipped on this mountain. Who is right here? Okay, so you say there, our fathers worshipped here. Who is right here ultimately? I mean, this is not what she's saying, but that's actually a kind of a very good question. I've heard it say a number of times by people. It's like, but our forefathers, they worshipped another god. Say for them they were animists, or they were Hindus, or they were Muslims, or whatever. So that would ultimately kind of mean that they will all go to hell. I'm in a situation where my ancestors, they are like Christians. They were at least all said they were Christian. Like I don't know of anyone in my family who didn't claim to be a Christian. As far back as I can go, I don't know of any. Or as far as back as I know. Okay, so it's one thing for me is kind of easier, but for those people who are at the moment non-Christians and then come to believe, and that's a big thing. This is what they believed, and now I need to believe something different, or I'm convinced, or the Spirit working in me prepared my heart, and now I believe something different. That means my ancestors are in hell. Yeah, that's not an easy thing. That's not an easy thing at all. So it's not saying this it's not easy. I understand it. It is not easy for people. So you ought to understand as well. Like saying our ancestors worship there. You say you're supposed to worship there. Our only place. Are we wrong? What's going on? It's a very, very good question. Verse 21. Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. Okay, Jesus again speaking of the question of the hour. There comes an hour, and it's soon. I mean, it's going a couple of years from then, when Jesus inaugurates the New Testament and when he dies on the cross, and that all of that happening there, and his resurrection, understandably, brings in this new covenant, right? And then it's not on this mountain. It's not in Jerusalem. It's not going to be any. Yeah, sure, you can do it there as well, but it's not the only places. Verse 22. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. So Jesus is not saying, you know what, yeah, I know your ancestors. I've seen him for centuries praying on this mountain. It's kind of fine. I mean, this is as good as they knew. They didn't know it all. And so it's kind of fine, you know. They will still get to heaven. It's okay. You can kind of keep on praying there and stuff like that. Like a little bit like modern Christianity, or even I've heard people say, just tell a Jew to stay a good Jew because then you can kind of get there. And if you love Jews, you will never say something like that. If you love others, you will never say these kinds of nonsense. Now, Jesus didn't say here, he didn't mince words. He said, yes, you worship what you didn't know, right? It's not even a question you knew what you worship. It's not a question of, is this the right place or that the right place? It's who you were worshiping, even anyhow, over there or over where, it doesn't matter. You did not know what you were worshiping in actual fact. But we worship what we know. So it's not about the where, it's about the who. Who are you worshiping? Are you worshiping the one true God, or are you worshiping? It doesn't matter where you're worshiping. Okay, this is as well what Jesus is getting at. So not so much addressing the question of who's right and the question of the where, it's a question of the who. Right? And that ought to be as well for all Christians who claim to be, or universalists, or claim that all roads lead to heaven kind of idea. Yeah, when Jesus clearly saying here, it's not that. It's about the who. You can't just worship anyone. That's not a get out of jail card, free card, right? May that be a lesson to you. Salvation is from the Jews. Yes, salvation came from the Jews. Why? Because this is through them that God sent the message. Ultimately, the prophets, and through the prophets continued and continued and continued, and through the years, and the Old Testament and the Word. So this is where the salvation is. It's not because of the Jews that the salvation is coming, right? But of God using them as these ordained people through in which ultimately Jesus will be born, and the one through whom the whole the Old Testament came.